Hare Krishna. Today we will be discussing the translation and explanation of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita Chapter 4, Text 14. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for fruit of actions. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of the work. As there are constitutional laws in material world stating that the king can do no wrong or that the king is not subject to the state laws, similarly the Lord, although he is the creator of this material world, is not affected by the activities of the material world. He creates and remains aloof from the creation, whereas the living entity are entangles in a fruitive results of the material activities. Because of their propensity for lording it over material resources. The proprietor of an establishment is not responsible for the right and wrong activities of the worker, but the worker are themselves responsible. The living entities are engaged in their respective activities of sense gratification, and these activities are not ordained by the Lord. For advancement of sense gratification, the living entity are engaged in the world of this world, and they aspire to heavenly happiness after the death. The Lord, being full in himself, has no attraction for so-called heavenly happiness, because the heavenly happiness demigods are only his engaged servant. The proprietor never desires the low-grade happiness, such as the workers may desire. He is aloof from the material actions and reactions. For example, the rains are not responsible for the different types of vegetation that appears on the earth, although without such rains there is no possibility of vegetative growth. Vedic Smriti confirms this fact as follows. In the material creations, the Lord is only the supreme cause. The immediate cause is the material nature by which the cosmic manifestation is visible. The created beings are of many varieties, such as demigods, human beings, and lower animals, and all of them are subject to the reactions of their past good and bad activities. The God only gives them the proper facilities for such activities and the regulations of the modes of the nature, but he is never responsible for their past and present activities. In the Vedanta Sutras, it is confirmed that the Lord is never partial to any living entity. The living entity is responsible for his own acts. The Lord only gives him facilities, though the agency of material nature and the external energy. Anyone who is fully conversant with all the intricacies of the law of karma or fruit activities does not become affected by the results of his activities. In other words, the person who understands this transcendental nature of the Lord is an experienced man in Krishna consciousness, and thus he is never subjected to the laws of karma. One who does not know the transcendental nature of the Lord and who thinks that the activities of the Lord are aimed at a fruitive result, as are the activities of the ordinary living entity, certainly becomes entangled himself in a fruitive reaction. But one who knows the supreme truth is liberated soul, fixed in Krishna consciousness. Text 15, translation. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding and so attained liberation. Therefore, as the ancients, you should perform your duty in this divine consciousness. There are two classes of men. Some of them are full of polluted material things within their hearts, and some of them are materially free. Krishna consciousness is equally beneficial for both of these persons. Those who are full of dirty things can take to the line of Krishna consciousness for a gradual cleansing process, following the regulative principles of devotional service. Those who are already cleansed of the impurities may continue to act in the same Krishna consciousness, so that others may follow their exemplary activities and thereby be benefited. Foolish persons or the neophytes in Krishna consciousness often want to retire from activities without having knowledge of Krishna consciousness. Arjuna desired to retire from activities on the battlefield was not approved by the Lord. One need only know how to act. To retire from the activities of Krishna consciousness and to sit aloof making a show of Krishna consciousness is less important than actually engaging in the field of activities for the sake of Krishna. Arjuna is here advised to act in Krishna consciousness, following in the footsteps of the Lord's previous disciples, such as sun god Vivasavan, as mentioned here before. The Supreme Lord knows all his past activities as well as those persons who acted in Krishna consciousness in the past, and therefore he recommends the act of Sun God who learned this art from the Lord some millions of years before. All such students of Lord Krishna are mentioned here as past liberated person engaged in the discharge of the duties of the allotted by Krishna. Text 16 translation. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all sins. Action in Krishna consciousness has to be executed in accord with the examples of a previous bona fide devotees. This is recommended in the 15th verse. Why such action should not be independent will be explained in the next text to follow. To act in Krishna consciousness, one has to follow the leadership of authorized persons who are in line of disciplinic successions, as explained in the beginning of this chapter. The system of Krishna consciousness was first narrated to the Sun God. The Sun God explained it to his son Manu. Manu explained his son to ISCKON, and the system is current on this earth from that very remote time. Therefore, one has to follow in the footsteps of a previous authorities in line with the disciplinic succession. Otherwise, even the most intelligent men will be bewildered regarding the standard action of Krishna consciousness. For this reason, the Lord decided to instruct Arjuna in Krishna consciousness directly. Because of the direct instruction of the Lord to Arjuna, anyone who follows in footsteps of Arjuna is certainly not bewildered. It is said that one cannot ascertain the ways of religion simply by imperfect experimental knowledge. Actually, the principles of religion can only be laid down by the Lord Himself. No one can manufacture a religious principle by imperfect speculation. One must follow in the footsteps of great authorities like Brahma, Shiva, Narada, Manu, Kumara, Kapila, Prahlada, Bhishma, Sukadeva, Goswami, Yamaraja, Janaka, etc. By mental speculation, one cannot ascertain what is a religion or self-realization. Therefore, out of causeless mercy of his devotees, the Lord explains directly to Arjuna what action is and what inaction is. Only action performed in Krishna consciousness can deliver a person from the entanglement of material existence. Text 17 translation. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. If one is serious about liberation from material bondage, one has to understand the distinction between action, inaction, and unauthorized action. One has to apply oneself to such an analysis of an action, reaction, and perverted actions because it is very difficult subject matter. To understand Krishna consciousness and action according to the modes, one has to learn one's relationship with the Supreme. That is, one who has learned perfectly knows that every living entity is the eternal servitor of the Lord, and that consequently one has to act in Krishna consciousness. The entire Bhagavad-Gita is directed towards this conclusion. Any other conclusions against this consciousness and its attendant reactions are vikamas, or prohibitive actions. To understand all these, one has to associate with authorities in Krishna consciousness and learn the secret from them. This is as good as learning from a Lord directly. Otherwise, even the most intelligent person will be bewildered. Text 18, explanation and translation. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. A person acting in Krishna consciousness is naturally free from the bonds of karma. His activities are all performed for Krishna. Therefore, he does not enjoy or suffer any of the effects of the work. Consequently, he is intelligent in human society. Even though he is engaged in all sorts of activities of Krishna, akarma means without reacting to the work. The impersonalist ceases fruitive activities out of the fear, so that the resultant action may not be stumbling block to the path of self-realization. But the personalist knows rightly his position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Because everything is done for Krishna, he enjoys only transcendental happiness in the discharge of this service. Those who are engaged in this process are known to be without desire for personal sense gratification. The sense of eternal servitorship to Krishna makes one immune to all sort of reactions, elements of the work. Text 19, translation. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every act is devoid of desire of sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker whose fruitive action is burned up by the fire of a perfect knowledge. Only a person in full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness, because the person in Krishna consciousness is devoid of all kinds of sense gratificatory propensities. It is to be understood that he has burned up the reactions of this work by perfect knowledge of his constitutional position. As the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is actually learned who has attained to such perfection of knowledge. Development of this knowledge of the eternal servitorship of the Lord is compared to fire. Such a fire, once kindled, can burn up all kinds of reactions to the work. Text 20, translation. Abandoning all attachment to the results of these activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. This freedom from the bondage of actions is possible only in Krishna consciousness. When one is doing everything for Krishna, a Krishna conscious person acts out of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he has no attraction for the results of the action. He is not even attached to his personal maintenance, for everything is left to Krishna. Nor is he anxious to secure things, nor to protect things already in his possession. He does his duty to his best of ability and leaves everything to Krishna. Such an unattached person is always free from the resultant reactions of good and bad. It is as though he were not doing anything. This is a sign of akarma, or actions without fruitive action. Any other action, therefore devoid of Krishna consciousness, is binding up the worker, and that is the real aspect of vikarma, as explained herein before. Text 21, translation. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all senses of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessaries of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. A Krishna conscious person does not accept good or bad results in his activities. His mind and intelligence are fully controlled. He knows that he is part and parcel of Supreme, and therefore the part played by him as a part and parcel of the whole is not by his choice, but is chosen for him by the Supreme Lord, and is done only through his agency. When the hand moves, it does not move out of its own accord, but by the endeavor of the whole body. A Krishna conscious person is always detailed with the supreme desire, for he has no desire for a personal sense gratification. He moves exactly like a part of the mission. As a mission part requires oiling and cleansing for maintenance, similarly a Krishna conscious man maintains himself by his work just to remain fit for action in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. He is therefore immune to all the reactions of his endeavors. Like animal, he has no proprietorship even for his own body. A cruel proprietor of an animal sometimes kills the animal in the possession, yet the animal does not protest, nor does it have any real independence. A Krishna conscious person fully engaged in self-realization has very little time to falsely possess any material object for maintaining of the body and soul. He does not require unfair means of accumulating money. He does not, therefore, becomes contaminated by such material sins. He is free from all reactions to his actions. Text 22, translation. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady both in success and failure, is never entangled, although performing action. A Krishna conscious person does not make much endeavor even to maintain his body. He is satisfied with the gains which are obtained of their own accord. He neither begs nor borrows, but he labors honestly as far as in his power, and is satisfied with whatever is obtained by his own honest labor. He is therefore independent in his livelihood. He does not allow anyone's service to hamper his own service in Krishna consciousness. However, for the service of the Lord, he can practice any in any kind of action without being disturbed by the duality of the material world. The duality of the material world is felt in terms of a heat and cold, or misery and happiness. A Krishna conscious person is above duality because he does not hesitate to act in any way for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, he is steady both in success and failure. These signs are visible when only one for the fully in the one. These signs are visible when one is fully in transcendental knowledge of Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. That ends the text 22 translation of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita Chapter 4. Continue listening. Thank you so much.